The Tale of Mrs.Tittlemouse by Beatrix Potter. Once upon a time there was a wood mouse, and her name was Mrs. Tittlemouse. She lived in a bank under a hedge. Such a funny house! There were the yards and yards of sandy passages, landing in the storeroom, and not the colors and the seed colors. Among us the rows of the hedge. There was a kitchen, a parlor, a potato, and a larder. Also, there was a Mrs. Tittlemouse's bedroom. There she kept in a little box bed. Mrs. Tittlemouse was the most terribly tidy, a pretty colored little mouse, always sweeping and dusting the soft sandy floors. Sometimes a beetle lost its way in the passage. "Swish, swish, little dirty fish," said Mrs. Tittlemouse, clearing her dustpan. And one day a little old woman ran up and down in a red spotty cloth. "You're housing in on the fire, Mother Ladybug. Fly away home to your children." Another day a big bad spider came in to center from the rain. "Beg your pardon, is this not Mrs. Muffet? Go away, you bold bad spider, leaving end of cobwebs all over my nice clean house." She bundled the spider out at the window. He let himself down the hatch with a long, thin bit of string. Mrs. Tittlemouse went on her way to a distant storeroom to fetch, carry the stone, and tistled down the stairs for dinner. All along the passage, they sniffed and looked at the floor. "I smell a smell of honey. Is it that the Pope house sleeping outside in the hedge? I am sure I can see the marks of a little dirty feet." Suddenly, round a corner, she met a Beverly Bumble. "Bizz, bizz, bizz," said the bumblebee. Mrs. Tittlemouse looked at her desperately. She wished that she had a broom. Good day, the baby bumbled. "I should be glad to buy some beeswax. But what are you doing down here? Why do you always come in at the window and say this, whiz?" Mrs. Tittlemouse began to get cross. "This whiz," replied Bobbity Bumble in the perfect peevish squeak. She sidled down a passage and disappeared into a storeroom, which had been used for the acorns. Mrs. Tittlemouse had eaten the acorns before Christmas. The storeroom ought to have been empty, but it was full of untidy dried moss. Mrs. Tittlemouse began to pull out the moss. 3 of 4 other bees put their heads out and buzzed furtively. "I am not in the habit of letting a large guinea. This is an intrusion, and said Mrs. Tittlemouse. "I won't have a damn turnout. Buzz, 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 buzz. I wondered who would help me. Bizz, whizz, whizz." I'll not have Mr. Jackson. He never wipes his feet. Mr. Tittlemouse decided to leave the miss until after dinner. When she got back to the parlor, she heard someone calling in a fat voice, and there sat Mr. Jackson himself. He was sitting all over a small rocking chair, twiddling his thumbs and smiling with his feet on the fender. He lived in a drain below the hedge in a very dirty wet ditch. Who do you do, Mr. Jackson? Dear me, that you have got very bad. Thank you, Mrs. Tittlemouse. I'll sit a while and dry myself, said Mr. Jackson. He sat up, smiled, and the water dripped off his coat tail. Mrs. Tittlemouse went around with a mop. He sat such a while that he had to beat a sack. Asked if he would take some dinner. First, she offered his curried done. Thank you, Mrs. Tittlemouse. Notice, said Mr. Jackson. He opened his mouth uncomfortably wide. He continually had another tooth in his head. Then she offered him a twisted down seed. Tiddly, puff, said Mr. Jackson. He pulled the thistle down all over the room. Thank you, Mrs. Tittlemouse. Now what I really should like would be a little dish of honey. I'm afraid I have not got any, Mr. Jackson, said Mrs. Tittlemouse. Tiddly, Mrs. Tittlemouse, said the smiling Mr. Jackson. I can smell it that it is why I came to call. Mr. Jackson rose ponderously from the table and began to look into the cupboards. Mrs. Tittlemouse followed him with the dishcloth to wipe his large wet marks off the parlor floor. When he had convinced himself that there was no honey in the cupboard, he began to walk down the passage. Indeed, you will stick fast, Mr. Jackson. Tiddly, Mrs. Tittlemouse. First, he squeezed into the pearly tiddly. No honey, Mrs. Tittlemouse. There were 3 creepy, crawly people hiding in the place of rocks. 2 of them got away, but the littlest one he caught. Then he squeezed into the wonder. Miss Butterfly was testing the sugar, but she flew away out of the window. Tiddly, Mrs. Tittlemouse, you seem to have plenty of visitors. And without any invitation, said Mrs. Thomasina Tittlemouse. They went along the sandy passage. Tiddly, buzz, whiz. He met a Bibbity round a corner and snapped her up and put her down again. I do not like bumblebees. They are all over the beestles, said Mr. Jackson, wiping his mouth with his coat sleeve. Get out, you nasty old toad, shrieked Bibbity Bumble. I shall got this turk. Distracted, scolded Mrs. Tittlemouse. She shut herself out off in the snow-colored, while Mr. Jackson pulled out the bee's nest. He seemed to have no objection to sting. When Mrs. Tittlemouse ventured to come out, everybody had gone away. But the untidiness was something dreadful. Never did I see such a mess of summers of honey and moss and little dirty feet all over my nice clean house. She gathers up the moss and the remains of the beeswax. Then she went out to fetch some twigs to prettily close up the front door. I will make it too small for Mr. Jackson. She fetched soft soap and flanneled and anew scrubbing the brush from the storeroom. But she wasn't too tired to do any more. First, she fell asleep in her chair, and then she went to bed. Will it ever to tidy again? Said poor Mrs. Tittlemouse. Next morning, she got up very early and began the spring cleaning, which lasted a fortnight. She swept and scrambled and dusted, and she rubbed up the furniture with beeswax, and polished her little tin spoons. When it was all beautifully neat and clean, she gave a party to 5 other little mice without Mr. Jackson. He smelled and purdy and came up the bank, but he could not squeeze in at the door. So they handed him out acorn cupfuls of honeydew to the window, and he was not at all offended. He sat outside in the sun and said, "Tiddly biddly widdly, you're very good health, Mrs. Tittlemouse." The end.